in Unit 15 we will cover. The first century politics, the colonial power, and then the British colonial state policy, and then princely state. First question arises: what is the meaning of colonialization? The British came as a traders and established factories in different places of coastal Orissa. Gradually, the opportunity to expand their commercial influence and control over the affairs of India. In 18th century, a large number of independent and semi-sovereign states such as Odha, Maratha, Bengal, Hyderabad, and Mysore emerged in India after the authority of the Mughal declined. These states arose either the rebellion of the powerful local legendary through a gradual step-by-step realization of autonomy by the powerful Mughal nobles. You have already read about some of the successor states in Unit 11. Local landed gentry who prepared in the Mughal service and commercial men and merchants who in the Mughal tax system combined together to provide a solid base to the new regional powers. These powers gained political ascendancy in the form of new secondary state formation. They were still in the process of establishing the legitimacy of their rule when they were unsteeled by a more powerful power in the form of East India Company. These units start with a discussion of the emergence of new local powers and the efforts made by them for consolidation. Further, it analyzes the economic and political basis of these powers and the process of legitimation of their authority. And then the unit also takes into account of their continuity and charge in the administrative structure of these powers. The first and the foremost point, emergence and the consolidation of power of new local magnate. In 18th century, the Umera and the Mansabadar began to lose their predominant political position. This was because the system of assignment of the revenue on which the administrative of the Mughal subsisted began to break down. Local revolts got into their earnings from the rents obtained from the Jagirdari. As a consequence, new social groups began to emerge and consolidate their political position. They were acquiring perpetual rights over the lands, converting non-hereditary into hereditary rights. They also started to realize tax from the markets and commerce. Some of them, such as Marathas, the Sikhs, and the Jats, took insurgency to consolidate their hold on localities. They made use of strong kingship links at the Pragana level to the carve out their sphere of use of strong political influence. Mughal intervention in the continual conflicts between the Deccan sultans greatly benefited the authority of Hindu zamindars generally. Different Muslim sovereignties so consolidated the general use of them against their opponents. The rise of Maratha in the western Deccan can be traced to this process. During the process of expansion of the Mughal Empire, many Rajas and Jamindars were incorporated into the Mughal system, which mutually benefited the Mughals and the local magnates. The cooperation of the gentry was essential to the gain access to the agricultural surplus of the new regions. The Mughals simply a new bureaucratic structure on the exciting pattern of Jamindari rights. The Mughal polity was therefore not a structure but was a hierarchical and a different power of structure. Mughal states share many attributes of sovereignty with these local magnates. The local managements were the real lords of men and resources as well as the guardian of the caste order on the local level. The first was the Marathas and then Bengal, Odha, Hyderabad, Mysore, etc. The Marathas were a new allied representing the familiarities of the several castes such as Lohar, Sutar, Bandri, etc. And even Dhongaras. The saved Bahmani kingdom of this rebellion against it a bonds of followers. They secured landed rights. At that time, the other kind of right to various sphere of the produce of land came into existence through colonization by the Marathas. also had their share to rights of record keeping and keeping accounts at their village and pragana level. Deshmukh provided military service of raising troops in the countryside and maintained law and order. They enjoyed various customary, military, judicial, and economic rights. The emergence of the Maratha power was therefore an indigenous rising of the powerful Jamindar, aspiring to sovereignty and favoring redistribution of the agrarian surplus that benefited the local landed gentry. The Maratha agrarian claims in the form of Chautha and Sardeshmukhi 25% and about 10 to 12.5% of revenue respectively were sort of Jamindari claim, a kind of protection rent imposed in the areas they colonized. And then Bengal. In Bengal, through the Mughal armies had subdued 12 rebellion chiefs in the early 17th century. Only a small portion of Bengal was assigned to the Mansabadar as Jagirdars. One third of the revenues compared to 4/5 of the revenue of Jagirdari for the rest of the empire. Hereditary chiefs and the Jamindars who exercised their patrimonial type of the authority based on face-to-face personal relation collected the other two-thirds of the revenue. Murshid Quli Khan, who initiated the process of autonomy for Bengal, Subakar and the power of Mughal, Mansabadar and strengthened the power of certain Jamindars. He transferred their Jagir to Orissa and the emperor himself stopped the transfer of imperial Mansabadar to Bengal after 712 AD. Although Murshid Quli Khan severely with the Jamindars who were defaulters in paying their dues, he encouraged and appointed of other landlord and land Jamindars who promptly paid the dues by allowing them to smaller Jamindars. In this way, they collected tax. A large size of Jamindari with an area of 30,000 square mile. They divided Bhudan system. Jamindari employing 30,000 military men required a official reaching down to the level of the village. In many cases, portions of Jamindar were given to revenue contracts of Jagirdari fixed sum. Murshid Quli Khan reconstructing of Jamindar support of these big Jamindars was the Bengal polity. But unlike the Marathas in the Deccan, the south and Jats in the north, the Jamindar of Bengal did not have any insufficient military capability despite the large rental income of the patronage they enjoyed. They went to argumenting their authority and were not loyalties of the state. For example, none of them came to defend the Suraj-Udaulah in 757 against the British. And then oath. In oath, there are several categories of Jagirdar and revenue reformers, but Mansabadari as a method of paying, providing salary in the form of Jagirs in lieu of government and military service was quoted. The oath of Nawab initially tried to pacify Jamindars, but a new local ruling allied soon emerged whose primary function was not military service but looking after the administration of revenue collection. Most of the lands in Oudh were formed out of new ruling allied for 1-3 years of a collection of rights. They were designated as omils were salaried. Revenue collection administrators in Mughal system, but under the Oudh rulers, they would build a Jagirdari system contract for paying a fixed amount to the treasury. Delhi Sultans had used his method of revenue collection. It was abandoned by Sher Shah and Akbar, but was revived during Jahangir's reign. It was widespread in 17th to 18th century politics and was initially even used by the company's administrators. These tended to become hereditary state in the course of time. And then the Hyderabad and Mysore. In 18th century Hyderabad, the assignment of the revenue grants tended to become hereditary. This created a more settlement land holding class which its revenue and military commitments through agents settled in Hyderabad. In Mysore, Hyder Ali 761 to 82 subjugated many refectory and they were however not displaced. They are usually confirmed in their states after the submitted and agreed to pay their dues regularly. He also used the method of revenue to the highest bidder or the law and the landholder who managed to acquire preparatory rights over large areas. The above description, a two-way process of acquiring power by the local management, consolidating their strength in their localities and thus getting recognized by the imperial power or the powers being conferred on them by imperial rulers on the promise to pay a certain share of revenue. In this way, Oudh, Bengal and Mysore, there was a large-scale instruction of usury capital in the revenue transaction. Revenues were assigned as the highest bidders. Apart from profiles and bankers, about 50%, and the others were 10% of the total collection was by the local official in collection cost of Shivani. Regional basis of the power status through a refractory means of regional revenue was almost same in the all regions. These were the revenue farmers, merchants, tribal families, and local landed standard. In some regions such as Bengal, Oudh, and Hyderabad, the province of Mughal of gradual metamorphics and become autonomous kingdom. Richard B. Burnett outlines the step towards the autonomy in this successor state. These steps were Subedar of Nazim as the chief military officer of the province acquired the ability to nominate or appoint his own diwans or revenue officials. Appointment of their own successor by Subedars. Number 2. Number 3. Division of revenue. Number 4. Independent diplomatic and military activity by the Subedars. Number 5. Regional ruling family established their residence at the provincial capitals rather than at Mughal court. Number 6. Starting of coins, at least the silver rupee of empire, if not the less common and more ceremonial gold by registered rulers. Number 7. The ultimate symbolic declaration of independence, the delivery of khutbah, the Friday innovation and Shemon Central Mosque on the name of regional ruler. And then Hyderabad Oath also they started their collection. In this way, the Britishers also started their ruling in India. At first, they came to India as a merchants. India as a merchants, and then they started ruling in our country. As on the other parts of India, East India Company had a humble beginning in Orissa also. They first came as a trader and established factories in different places of coastal Orissa. Gradually, the opportunity to expand their commercial influence and control over the affairs of Orissa. The Britishers annexed in India in a phased manner. After annexation of different parts of states, they were taken to different political jurisdictions. However, British conquest of Orissa paved the way for the significant changes in the administrative, economic, social, and cultural sphere of Orissa. It opened the door for the modernization of Indian society and Orissan society and culture. On the other hand, the increasing British rule became the major cause of Orissa's economic backwardness. In the Middle Times, the territories of Orissa are said to have extended roughly from Ganges to Godavari and from Amarakotak to Bay of Bengal. In the second half of 15th century, the rulers of Surya dynasty extended their empire as far as river Kaveri. At that time, the last independent king of Orissa was Mukunda Deva, who was killed by one of his feudatory chiefs. When the prolonged struggle with Afghan rulers of Bengal in 1568, the medieval Orissa lost their independence. It was one of the last Hindu kingdoms of India to fail the Muslims. Before the Afghans could consolidate their power, the Mughals entered in the field in 1592. Mansingh annexed Orissa to Akbar's empire. The territorial dismemberment of Orissa had begun before the fall of Hindu kingdom. But by the time of Akbar, the territories of India were appointed in the 5 sarkars such as Jaleshwara, Bhadra, Katak, Kalinga, Dandapad, and Rajamohendri. Those sarkars were included in the Sabha of Bengal and were generally known as the Mughal Bandi. The hill territories were kept under a separate head in the revenue accounts of the empire. Those areas were known as Gurjaras, Garjat, whose rulers were recognized as the Mughal feudatories and paid annual tribute of the emperor. Soon after the settlement of Akbar, the Sarkar of Rajamundry and a portion of the Sarkar of Kalinga, Dandpat were occupied by the Shahi kings of Golconda. By the time of Jahangir, territories of the south of the Lake of Chilika had been separated from the Mughal dominion and as such from the rest of Orissa. Those areas were known as Northern Sarkar under the Muslim rulers of the south. After the death of Aurangzeb, when the Mughal Empire began disintegrate, Orissa passed under the rule of independent Nawab of Bengal. However, Nawab could not rule for long. Maratha attack on the dominance of Alibardi Khan, the Subedar of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa finally forced into surrender of Raghuji Bhonsle of Nagpur in 1751. The river Subarnarekha became the new boundary between the Maratha dominion and Alibardi of Bengal. Alibardi Khan of Bengal were extended from the river in the north to Lake Chilika. In the middle, while Lord Clive got the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa in 1765. Orissa in this time more than the area beyond their river Subarnarekha, especially the district of Medinapur. The titular Mughal emperor used the term Bengal, Bihar, Orissa as those territory had long formed one administrative unit in the days of great Mughals. At the same time, the emperor gave the northern Sarkar and free gift to the English. It was not, however, until either treaty had been concluded between the English and Nizam. The southern area under the Madras presidency and the northern areas under the Bengal presidency. Considerable attempts were made by the British administration from Clive to Cornwallis to take possession of the coastal Orissa from the Maratha, but without any success. It was left for Lord Wellesley, finally conquer Orissa during the Second Maratha War by the Treaty of Devgarh, which was concluded on December 1803. Only three districts of Baleshwar, Cuttack, Puri in the coastal range and the 18 Gurjat in the hill tract continued the British Orissa in 19th century and were under the Bengal presidency. The rest of Orissa Gurjats, including Sambalpur, were placed under the central province. In this way, the British conquest of Orissa and the early administration started. The British contact with Orissa began in the half of 17th century. Through our national character, Hunter remarks, we settled in Orissa as a merchant long before we made our appearance as rulers. One of the earliest British factories in India was established at Haripur in 1633. Subsequently, other factories were established at Baleshwar and river Budhabalanga and Pipli in the river Subarnarekha. Those two Orissa harbors. The British factory at Baleshwar developed in the center of maritime trade. In 1670, several factories of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Baleshwar was the seat of their chief and his council. The preeminence of Baleshwar as a commercial center continued for a long time. British diplomacy for our country. Orissa came within the Battle of East India Company. Political interest after the Battle of Buxar on 12th August 1765, Lord Clive got Diwani of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Following the death of Aurangzeb, when Mughal Empire began to disintegrate, Orissa was brought under the rule of Britishers. For a long time, Maratha attacks took place on the dominions of Alibardi Khan, the Subedar of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. He was finally forced to surrender a part of Orissa to Raghuji Bhonsle at Nagpur in 1751. At that time, the territories by Alibardi Khan extended from river Subarnarekha in the north to Lake Chilika in the south. Soon after, the Grand Diwani Clive made an attempt to get position of Orissa proper through negotiation with Maratha, but nothing come out Clive's policy to get by negotiation with Marathas, but nothing came out of the negotiation with Marathas. From Clive to Cornwallis, the company had tried to get position by negotiation, but had failed. It was left for Lord Wellesley finally to conquer Orissa during the Second Maratha War. The British conquest of the province in 803 was an easy task for two reasons. First, the Raja of Nagpur had no adequate troops in Orissa to resist the British army, and in fact, resistance was given to the enemy in the time of occupation. Secondly, the British army had earned sound knowledge of the topography of Orissa during their march through its territory on two previous occasions under the command of Cole Pizzar in 1781, Crockwell in 1790. In spite of weak position Maratha in the province, British authorities made so a preparation for war and annexation of Orissa. British army began its march on 8 September 803, but only 3 days after Hunter due to the former illness. The troops were required to cross the mouth to Chilika Lake, narrow and for reaching Maratha territory. The British officer bridled him before the beginning of the march, and naturally he proved necessary steps to local knowledge of safe passage of the troops. Thus began the victorious march of the British army in Orissa. The British conquest in Orissa already 803, followed by one of the most miserable periods in history of Orissa. The British officers serving Orissa agreed the British administration and disasters. These various causes responsible for these things, the causes contributing to wretched the state province in the early part of country, such as disintegration of the administration, exclusion of area from various employees, inequitous land revenue policy, oppressive salt monopoly, unsympathetic judicial policy system, and disorganization of the administration. After the Mughal conquest, there was a regular settlement of the crown lands by Todermal, Akbar general and finance minister. He himself consolidated the Mughal rule in Orissa, and one of the first acts as the administrator was detail of survey and settlement of the province. Although the Mughal rule in Orissa was military occupation, it not be having neglected the civil administration. Raja Mansingh constituted the wise policy to Todermal. Neither official nor peasants were subjected to plunder and extortion during the Mughal rule. The revenue system organized by Todermal and Mansingh continued till the year 751, when the province passed in the hands of Maratha. The Marathas ruled Orissa for nearly 50 years, during which the province was exposed to every spice of rapine and plunder. They made no attempt to maintain civil administration. All their efforts were directed towards from the conquered province utmost flattering revenue. Peasants and officials were subjected to every in the suggested manner. In this time, the Maratha led the mistruths of governing power on the part of the people. One result of this was to revenue documents were obtained by the British from the former official, except certain records relating to assessment of rent. No knowledge was therefore gained to various rights of the holders of the different tenures and titles of other collecting officers. It was not until the settlement of 1837 that the rights titles were finally settled and adjusted. The former Maratha officials like Sardar Kuango, the Lukandars and Macadams were all into the preserving for their own use the information which should have been the hands of government. Those persons whom the actual collection of rents were vested were not interested in disclosing the real amount of their collection, while their superiors used their knowledge as a means of extortion by threatening and disclose to the authorities of the fact of under assessment. Some were busy in establishing a Jomidari title which had never existed, and others busy in furthering a claim to hold rent-free lands, legible assignment, and according to L.S. Maddox, to settle the settled the land revenue of the province between 1890 and 1899. He remarked, the hands of the government most were against their neighbors and every man's hand was against government. In these circumstances, the company officers were definitely presented with most formidable obstacle in devising any scheme of good government. Exclusion of other authorities or areas from various employments. From the beginning of the company's rule, the officers and servants of the company adopted an unsympathetic attitude towards the people of Orissa also. The officials' encouragement were given to the people by the officer of the new government. They came to think every law about the intellectual acquirement among the Orias. In 1970, the commissioner of Orissa observed that ignorance and stupidity are indeed almost and they do not hesitate to acknowledge their own inferiority, intellect and comprehension to the highly gifted neighbors. Mr. Carr observed in one of his letters, such is the gross ignorance of the landlords in that the best amongst them are the decided inferior in point of intellect and information to the lowest order of the same class in Bengal. And people of Khorda sunk in the most objection state of human degradation and intellectual and corporal imbalancity. The British officer had thus abused the suspicious of the Orients for which they decided not to give them employment in various offices. They thought that knew nothing of the Bengali language themselves. They used to bring with them from Bengal many Bengali employees with the help of the letters in found more convenient to the carry of on the business administration. An almost systematic exclusion of the Oriya from every situation in the policy, revenue and salt department prevailed from the very beginning of British rule. Thus grave injustice was done to the people. The improprieties and of course unforeseen consequence which had flown from the almost complete exclusion of the Orias from all officers of the company's government are really lamentable. It operated to degrade the people in their own estimation, ever a primary cause of deterioration of moral character of the people. It made them feel actually disadvantage of the condition of a conquered nation. An undesirable impression was produced by the Britishers. At that time, government was hostile towards the aspiration of the people, although it viewed the people of a neighboring province with a great sympathy and was even determined to promote their interests. They seldom tried to understand their real needs, wants to grievance and the difficulty. Rather, they made use of their influence and authority to extort and plunder. Large sums were always collected them by corrupt methods. They are no doubt caused much of common people. They are integrate of some unscrupable situation. Almost resulted, it ruins many of the people. Jamindars and their replacement of Bengali Jamindar. Thus, the Orias also suffered from service of the East India Company, proved to be one of the worst feature of early British rule. In 1800 was made the first regular settlement of land revenue province. Regulation of 12,800 provided a successive settlement at last, respectively 1 year, 3, 4 and 3 years. At the expiry of this period, 11 years, it was promised to introduce a permanent settlement, but that promise was never redeemed. In point of fact, a series of 10 short temporary settlements followed the last year in 1837. Dated 804, regulation of 805, total revenue 11.78 thousand. 805 regulation 12, 805 10,000, etc. They made a schedule. The province was visited at that time. The province was visited many floods and droughts since 804, but the early collectors were strongly taxed Bengal regulation, so they were not atoll various grounds admitted by the Maratha, such as crops, drought, and flood. The revenue once estimated not education to allow the grounds of abandonment, and the early collectors were not prepared to make for all such circumstances, although the demand of the early British settlement was considerably in excess of that Maratha. The settlement was subsequently recognized in 1839. In the following year, a large reduction were made in the previous revenue in certain parts of the province. In this way, in the most unfortunate features of early British rule was unexempted change property of public sale, which had taken place during 12 years of the British possession. And then the most threat was speculative Bengalis who expected permanent settlement made in Odisha. In this way, the invaders they come as a merchant and the all situation and all things and all economical system captured by the Britishers. The colonial powers Portugal, Dutch and France. The introduction, arrival of the Portuguese phase of the Dutch dominions and French in India and the introduction. In this unit of the colonial powers, you will be able to understand how the European traders influenced the Indian states and the society in different ways. Impact of Orissa also. Apart from this, you will also learn about the different methods of control exercised by the early commercial empire. Their role in inter-Asian and Indo-European trade, their administrative function, and finally their transmigration from maritime powers to territorial power. Disruption in trade route and changing political in Middle East compelled the European traders to search for new trading routes to India. After many efforts, the European traders first appears on the Indian Sea coast in the 15th century. The coming of Vasco da Gama at Calicut in May 1498 marked the beginning of a new era in Euro-Asian trade. Initially, the Portuguese established their control over the mercantile activity between India and Europe, since they had discovered the route to India by Cape of Good Hope. However, providing finance and political support to the Portuguese at that time was very enterprises. By the end of 16th century, the Dutch and English corporate merchant company entered the area and started challenging to Portuguese monopoly. The English East India Company was formed in 600 and Dutch in 602. The French East India Company established in 664 soon followed them. Although dominated by single large corporation of merchants in their home countries, the private traders also carried out some amount of Euro-Asian nations and were based on attempts to monopolize trade. Their activities were confined to coastal ports of cities in India and did not open the sovereignty of the indigenous politics of any great extent. They utilized the exciting network of indigenous system of trade, and they generally exchanged Indians goods for bullion. They turned the balance of foreign trade in India favor and became an instrument of economic growth. This was a reason for the tolerant view of Indian rulers toward them. There are areas of conflict over the control of trade and markets, but generally use of armed tactics was avoided. The French were the first attempt some part of territorial empire in India on large scale. The British East India Company later initiated their method followed by the Dutch. They were also a conflict amongst the European powers for securing trade monopoly and territorial control. And then the Portuguese, arrival of our Portuguese, one by one, the foreigners, outsiders came to India and looted them. The expedition of Vasco da Gama that reached Calicut in May 1498 after rounding the Cape of Good Hope was inspired by many motives. The desire of the Portuguese monarch D. Manuel in 1495-1521 to open a direct sea route to India was primarily commercial through sometimes it was a disgust under the grab of Christian religious ideology which stressed the mission of Christianity. The basic aim of the Portuguese was to enrich themselves and their state by establishing their monopoly over the spice trade with Europe and lucrative business of the time. They used military force to achieve this aim. Forts were established at Cochin and Canonara. The first Portuguese victory, Francis de Almeida, who arrived in 1505 AD, was however not very successful in furthering the commercial and territorial of Portuguese in India. It was in 1509 to 15 gave a shape of the Portuguese geological and political design. He quickly occupied the several port cities in India. At that time, in Malacca, in 1550, Hormuz at the mouth of Persian Gulf was also acquired. The fort of Colombo was established in Sri Lanka in 1508. Goa became the capital of Portuguese commercial empire in India in 1530. Subsequently, more conquest followed in 16th century. The Portuguese occupied Diu, Daman, and Basin to control the trade from Gujarat, and also occupied the coast of Konkan and Malabar to control the trade from Malabar. By the end of 16th century, they had about 50 forts and powerful naval of 100 ships in this process of commercial and territorial empire. The Raja of Cochin became puppet of Portuguese in order to increase his own power in relation to his nominal overlord, the Jamorin of Calicut. The commercial and the naval ships of Portuguese were also throughout the century partly managed by the crews and soldiers recruited from among the local people. And then the Portuguese sea-borne empire started 1500 to 1640. The empire created by the attempts of the Portuguese described in the earlier section was not a territorial regime. It was a maritime network within which the territory, establishment of sea portion, administrative arrangement in Asia and East Africa were placed subordinate to the Portuguese crown. The Libson Casa da India, a royal trading firm, headed the sea-borne empire. In addition to the crown group of merchants and bankers of various European were also associated with the Casa da India. They played an important role in the procurement and transportation in the return cargo from Asia. In Asia, the enterprise was under the control of an administrative setup known as state in India. It was headed by the Viceroy of Goa, the head of the civil and military government of the whole empire from East Africa to Maluka and Morocco. The chief purpose of the forts and their captains was to secure commercial monopoly of the spice trade with Europe as well as monopoly of the trade between the various specified ports within Asia in order to tap it and to control its direction in the Indian Ocean. The main items sought by the Portuguese in Asia were especially pepper. The Portuguese produced bulk of this commodity from Malabar and later from Canada. The trade in precious metals from Portugal to India is reverse direction as a royal monopoly since 1506. Private trade in monopoly items was, however, allowed to naval officials and some specific individuals under royal treasury. In 1575, the royal monopoly of pepper trade was given to merchant Conrad Roth and Milanese merchant Ravalacca. In this time, subsequently, the crown made arrangement with other houses while retaining some share in this profitable trade. The contract between the continued until 1598, when a substantial challenge from the British and Dutch in the sea-borne spice trade made in uneconomical for the pepper contracts. Even the formation of Portuguese India Company in 1628, it was not a successful experiment and the company was dissolved in 1633. The cargo sent from the Portugal to Asia for pepper and other goods included precious metals. Non-precious metals such as copper, lead, tin, and mercury. Some amount of coal, aluminum, wines, and olive oil. Copper among the non-precious metal constituted the most important item for quite some time in the term of value. The Portuguese also participated in the inter-Asian trade, probably larger in value and more profitable than the trade between Goa and Lisbon. Private individuals, however, mostly reaped the profits from his inter-Asian trade. A part of the Portuguese Asian trade sustained the export of spice of Lisbon, which were obtained mainly by the export of Indian textile to Molucca. Maluka. From the very beginning, it was loose monopoly of the crown with a crew members of the royal ships allowed to participate in it. The selected state officials were also granted the right to engage in this trade to some extent. In this case, shortage of resources, even private traders were allowed to participate in this Asian trade. As the ship captain used royal ships for carrying goods for their own private trade. Less profitable and more profitable. The Portuguese state finance in 1540 and 1558 were in bad shape, and Crown found it unprofitable to continue to participate in the Asian trade. For the Crown, it was difficult to sustain its monopoly as the royal house did not have financial resources needed to protect it. And then the estimate of Portuguese commercial empire. You are you are aware that soon as Portuguese reached India, they had successfully tried to monopolize trade in spice. Throughout the 16th century, a series of order and instructions from Lisbon, Goa, made it clear that trade in spice was reserved for the Portuguese crown and its agents. This monopoly right was strictly enforced, and naval supremacy of the Portuguese played a significant role in it. The regulation and control of all seaborne traffic was essential to achieve the same. The Crown organized expeditions to specified places with Asia on a monopolized basis. Only the ships could make given voyage in particular year. The cargo space on the royal ships was sold in the early 16th century to the private merchants on a high premium. The crown found such commercial costly after 1548. The Portuguese also tried to control and tax in the trade carried by the other traders on the Indian Ocean. The main instrument used was the cartage or passport backed up by the armament. The Portuguese justification for their attempt to control the sea trade in Asia was based on their claim to be the lords of the sea. All the ships trading within Asia were thus required to take pass or issued by a competent and authority. Evolution of Portuguese commercial empire. The initial ill effect of Portuguese monopoly was felt on the trade through the Red Sea to the Mediterranean in the first half of 16th century. This trade was revived in the second half of 16th century when the Portuguese control flanked. The Portuguese monopoly gave way to more efficient monopoly of the Dutch in the 17th century. Moreover, to what extent did the projected huge profit in the spice trade was true needs to look into. The state finance of Portugal deteriorated during the second half of 16th century. The maintenance of forts and fleets did cost vast sums of money. The sustenance of Asian trade monopoly was thus a costly affair. Secondly, the Portuguese state depended on the foreign merchants' capital, foreign exporters, and foreign markets. The Portuguese also found it difficult to impose complete monopoly due to the opposition of Asian traders and rulers. There was a frequent leakage in the system. The Gujarati merchants collected vast amount of paper in 1540 and 1550 in the Bay of Bengal and all over Asia. The Portuguese failed to take over, which was acquired by a hostile Ottoman Empire in 1538. This left upon a vital gap in this monopolistic design. The Portuguese also tolerated private trade of Asian merchants in the Persian Gulf because they relied on the merchants for the supply of the control over horse, and trade in Gujarat was one of the basic concerns of the Portuguese. In this way, the Portuguese also tried to monopolize horse trade by centralizing the whole horse trade from Arabia and Persia. All ships coming from South Arabia and with horse could came only Goa. The main clique were the system with need to the local rulers for political reasons. The Portuguese could extract concession from the local rulers if they allowed to supply of horses without obstacle to them. or denied horse to their enemy. The church in Portugal also disliked the idea of selling horses to the infield. There are occasional conflicts between Portuguese and the nobility in the service of local rulers and merchants. In Gujarat, the interest of the indigenous powerful of groups in Portuguese, Malik Ayaz, self-noble Gujarat Sultan, resisted the Portuguese in due. In this way, one by one, they take over the all trading with their trading situation started. Phase on the Dutch dominions in 680. The State General, the nation governing body, the Dutch Republic founded in Coast Campaign. The company was formed as a result of the few of companies, wealthy merchants from different city argument the capital resource base for the company. At that time, in 1680, especially in the sphere of Euro-Asian trade started. The Dutch also English soon expanded their trading networks to include the Coromandel coast. Bengal and Gujarat. These new colonial powers also remained confined to the coastal areas, but trading were also established in the interior areas such as Ahmedabad and Agra. In this way, the administrative functioning of Dutch factories and the impact of the Dutch Empire in Indian society state started. The French India companies of Oriental India, the transition from commercial empire, etc. was started. The role of the French parts in Indian state also started. So, two questions arise in this unit. First was, would you consider the French to be the colonization in India? Discuss the chief characteristics of Portuguese sea-borne empire. The two questions arrived in this unit. In this unit, you have learnt about the activities of early European trading companies. The European trading, the European trading companies established their commercial empires through monopolizing maritime trade. The relatives of superiority of the Europeans on the sea was crucial in the establishment of such empires. The activities of these empires were mostly confined to the coastal areas of the Indian subcontinent, and they utilized the exciting network of trade and finance. The balance of Euro-Indian trade was favorable to the India and amounts of millions and billions. In this way, the foreign trade of European merchant corporate house benefited the Indian economy. Although there was an occasional conflict between the European companies and the Indian rulers over control of trade, there was no large-scale use of force. The manpower available to the European company was limited, and they could not offer the challenge in the indigenous ruler. The French were the first to attempt establishment of a territorial on the strength of new type of professional infantry trained deployed the mass coordinated attack. The French experiment failed, but the English later successfully utilized the French model of empire building. And then started the British colonial state. The political structure which evolved in India under the British during the initial phase of their rule was civil in nature. I have already told about the British colonial system firstly. Okay, and then we will tell in nature of the colonial state. The Battle of Plassey marks a significant break in the modern Indian history. The East Indian Company, whose original purpose was commercial gain, and the territories like other sovereign power as a private enterprise and admire its territories for the profits of shareholders. But the ultimate source of sovereignty lay with the British Parliament and Crown. The twin situation that regulated its government before taking over the direct administration of the Indian Empire in 1858. After 1858, some modification was introduced in the institution and administrative machinery founded by the Company Raj, but the basic fabrics of the state and its purpose remained unaltered. Some scholars argued that the early colonial state and its edifice was built in foundation of the exciting pre-colonial institution, and they refused to acknowledge any sharp break the nature of policy after the socio-economic. We now turn to analyze some important aspect of colonial state. With the British administration, the dark clouds of misery loomed large over the economic horizon of Orissa. The one pointed goal of the British was to exploit the Indians through their land revenue and commercial policy. They very much exploited Indians and Indians people. Indians extend at that time. Orissa extended from 749 north to 23 for longitude and 81 degree to 29 degree latitude. The free preeminence of Baleshwar as a commercial center continued for a long time. Another for a Britishers, exploitation was inaugurated with their commercial policy. The British conquest in 803 and followed by one of the most miserable periods in history of India and Orissa also. All the British officers then serving Orissa and that the British administration was disastrous, its effects on the people. To the errors of the administration, he added the severe part of the country. The causes contributing to the wretched state to province the early part of the country may be summed as follows. The British contacts which begin in the half of 17th century through our national character, Hunter remarks, we settled in Orissa and India as merchants long before we made our appearance as a ruler. One of the earliest British factories in India was established at Haripur in 1633. In this way, the land revenue settlement in Gujarat was an epoch-making struggle that considerable influence of the people. The 16 Gujarat feudatory states were enjoyed sovereign power under the direct advice of guidance of the British. The kings of the areas become the praja remained backward, suppressed through several means of taxation like Bethi, Bogari, Rosad and Magna. This system of taxation was continued. The royalty system and Munro was implemented in Madras, Bombay, Assam. Of course, it had no much good effect many times. The revenue was limited from 45%, 55% production. This was pressure of the peasant. The Nahalwari system was also adopted by the East India Company in 1833 in Punjab, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. This was a direct connection to the peasant and government. However, he never wanted to give the right if the land to the peasant. The present attempt to the study revenue system, the British government explored the Indians through the land revenue policy and commercial policy. Through the drain of wealth from India to England made our land poor. Of course, by making roads, introducing railways, telegraph, and British government modernized India. This modernization was awakened to Indians and in due course of time, they carried on their free struggle against the British Raj. In this way, the Britishers looted and looted. The problem-seeking legitimacy also related to the issue of accommodation align of the concept. And then the new chapter will start. That was the last unit. Okay, the princely states.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. Actually, I am extremely sorry, ma'am. Actually, some
Okay.
student trying to the joining the online class, but it is impossible for them. ସେମାନେ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କଲେ ବି କ୍ଲାସ୍ ଜଏନ୍ କରିପାରୁନି ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ଆପଣଙ୍କର କ୍ଲାସ୍ ଜଏନ୍ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରୁଛନ୍ତି କିନ୍ତୁ ଅନଲାଇନ କନେକ୍ସନ ହେଇପାରୁନି ତାଙ୍କ ଦ୍ୱାରା
ତ ସେଇଟା ବିଜୟ ସାର୍ଙ୍କୁ କୁହ ସେ କିଛି କରିବେ କାହିଁକି ନା ସିଏ ହଉଛନ୍ତି ଆମର ହୋଷ୍ଟ ଆଡମିନ୍ ହେଲା ଆଉ ତାଙ୍କୁ ସିଏ ଯଦି ଚାହିଁବେ ସେ କରିପାରିବେ ବୋଧେ କି ନା ନେଟୱାର୍କ ସ୍ଲୋ ଅଛି କି
ହଁ
ଆଜି
କିନ୍ତୁ
ତ ଆଜି 25 ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ଅଛ ହେଲା ଆଜି
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ନେଟୱାର୍କ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ପାଇଁ 4-5 ଜଣ ବର୍ଷା ପାଇଁ 2-3 ଜଣ କାଲି ଆସିପାରିଲେନି ପରଦିନ ବି ସେମିତି ହେଲା ସେ ଉଷା ଯାହା ବି ସେ ବି ଜଏନ କରିପାରିଲା ନାହିଁ ହେଲା
ଆଜ୍ଞା
କାହିଁକି ନା ତାଙ୍କର ବି ଲାଇନ ନଥିଲା ନେଟୱାର୍କ ସ୍ଲୋ ଥିଲା ତ ମେ ବି ଯଦି ହେଇପାରିବ ଆଉ ଟିକେ ପରେ ବିଜୟ ସାର୍ଙ୍କୁ କିଛି ମେସେଜ କରିକି ତାଙ୍କୁ କୁହ କାହିଁକି ନା ମୁଁ ଏବେ କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁ କରିବି ପ୍ରିନ୍ସଲି ଷ୍ଟେଟ୍ ତେଣୁ ଡିଷ୍ଟର୍ବାନ୍ସ ହେଲେ ମତେ ଅଡୁଆ ହେଇଯିବ ଠିକ ଅଛି
ଆଜ୍ଞା ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ହଉ ଓକେ
ଓକେ
ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ
ଓକେ
ୟୁ ମ୍ୟାମ୍
ହଁ ଓକେ ୱେଲକମ୍ In the last unit, we will focus on the princely order consisting of about 600 states that survived the imperial annexation of the empire. Since the number of princely states was so large, it would be difficult to deal with the individual state. Hence, this unit discuss only some basic features such as the evolution of princely state. It also specify focus on the princely order of prop of imperial design of mercantilism, and they were used to establish imperial control over the princes. The study of the impact of modernization of the princely state, and finally the fall of the princely order are the other themes dealt with the unit. The different parts patterns of the British conquest of India and the methods employed to create an empire resulted so many trouble. The structure of the princely order: the princes ruled in about 2/5 of the Indian subcontinent, having 1/3 of the population of the British. Some of these states like Hyderabad, Mysore, Kashmir were equal in size of many European countries, while there are also very small feudal states. The common feature of all these states was that they recognized the British crown. They enjoyed only as much independence as allowed to them by the British, and the permanent power treated them as feudatory or subordinate state. If the sovereignty of the princes had any meaning, it was in relation to their own subject. The British protected the princes against any threat to their autocratic power, internal or external. Most of the princely states were absolute authority. It was under the umbrella of British protection that all these absolute rulers worked with all their dignity. The princes were therefore useful tools in overall imperial design. They were natural allies of the British rulers and were always willing to help their patrons in the times of crisis such as war, intense nationalist mobilization. The British could always started to bulwarks and reaction. However, despite monarchical form of government in the late of 19th century, imperial traditional bound unchanging oriental despot, the progress and change may not be entirely true, as the forces of modernization and social change were already underway in some of the more progressive states. The nationalist historiography also attributes the collapse of the princely order to monarchic order, absolute form of government, and this type of rule in the post-colonial democratic setup. Apart from the popular opposition to the princes due to impact of radical nationalist modern politics, the fall of the princely order was also precipitated by the British Crown's abandonment of its formal areas and steps taken by the independent Indian government. Prior to 760, the East India Company had signed treaties with local coastal powers of commercial purpose and suppression of privacy. As the company was transferred from primarily a trading company into territorial power after the Battle of Plassey, it began to conclude subsidiary alliance with military weekend rulers from the 760 onwards. In the first subsidiary alliance with the Nizam of Hyderabad, the company agreed to furnish its well-trained troops in exchange for an annual subsidy. Similar treaties were concluded with Oudh, Cooch, Bihar, Carnatic, and subsequently. There were a number of practical considerations for retaining of indigenous princes. Firstly, the subsidiary alliance became an important tool for the extension of British dominance during the last 18th, early and 19th century. The British lacked the financial resources and manpower necessary to conquer and administrate the entire subcontinent. The empire builders therefore sought to limit their direct rule to economically prosperous and politically strategic areas and establish control over the other realms indirectly through a system of alliances with indigenous rulers. Generally, the states were surrounded by British controlled territory, cut off from sea routes and were geographically not in the position to challenge the British. Rather, they had to dependent in many respects. Secondly, the other areas that were troublesome to conquer and loot and located in the inhospitable and terrain such as desert tracts, hills, and central India. The highlands of Orissa, clogged by dense forest and remote reaches of Kathiawara, which little arable lands and little revenue were also brought under the terms of treaty. Thirdly, the treaties with indigenous rulers also gave a stamp of legitimacy to the permanent power. The British used to variety of means to acquire a legality and moral basis for their rule. The desire for legitimacy was the prime reason which led the British to carefully develop symbols that emphasize their position over the princess, while allowing to the latter to retain extravagant ceremonial of authority such as the ancient Darbar ceremonies and gun salutes. Finally, in return for promise of military protection from internal and external danger, the East India Company secured the loyalty of princes and their subjects. The company could also raise contingents of troops paid from the state revenue or the annual cash tribute payment. The subsidiary alliance thus extended the British sovereignty without incurring much expense. The political map of India was largely settled after the Third Anglo-Maratha conflict in 1818 to 20. However, the British continued to use annexation as a solution for misrule and indigenous rulers. Dalhousie annexed the Satara, Jhansi, Nagpur and Oudh. Satara in 1849, Jhansi 1853, Nagpur 1854 and Oudh 1856. At the same time, other alternatives to annexation were also attempted before 1857. Jhansi was brought under direct British rule in 1830, but a new ruler in 1842. Dalhousie rejected the proposal to annex on the ground that terms of the treaty with the state did not permit annexation. No state was annexed after the events of 1857, although the British bureaucratic administration of states in a long period. For instance, Manipur was ruled by the British after the revolt 1891 until 1907. The British policy towards annexation rose from the fundamental contradiction between the imperial interest of a trading company to expand and rule without getting involved in military operation and incurring military cost and the zeal of the utilitarian and evangelists for reform of Indian society. Many British administrators were disdainful for the princely order and regarded them as a corruption and socio-economic stagnation and as a symbol of Oriental despotism. However, the support of local princes during the revolt of 1857, especially Patiwala, Mysore and Hyderabad, to the British imperial cause, strengthened their claims as military, administrative and political allies to the British rulers. In the British perception, they became the natural leaders of the people and were rewarded in the form of honor and territories in some cases. The British rulers confirmed a British guarantee for their perpetual existence. Queen Victoria proclaimed that all the treaties and engagements made with them by under the authority of Honorable East India Company are us by expected and will be surplusly observed. We desire no extension of our present territorial position. We shall respect the right, dignity, and honor of native princes as our own. Assurances are given to the prince that their dynasties would be allowed to last for want of natural things. Not a single dynasty lacked after 1857, and none of the states were annexed. The heavy cost of the suppression of 1857 revolt led a deflect of 15 lakhs and 1858-59, and this became the principal argument against further annexation. The borders of states remain frozen in the post-revolt period. Basic features of the sovereignty in the princely state. Okay. The princely states were vast, mostly in the state of different in size, the composition and income. The popular perception created by the imperial them as a elephant riding rajas enjoying the company of dancing girl. We should analyze the basic of feudal order within the state. According to W. Hunter and Alfred Loyal, India was projected as a society which privileged in the traditional, the rustic, and the material over the urban and modern. The East was seen as a respiratory, ancient tradition, and by that time, colorful rite, majestic spectacle, and archaic knowledge. In this thing, the princess was seen as the representative of clan-based polity, having, for example, direct link with the Hindu kingdoms of pre-Muslim period. In opposition to there was a constant imperial surveillance, interference, and pressure, which saved much as a energy of old Darabari system. The traditional role of socio protection attributed to the state soon gave way to princes who had only the hunting range to patrol. The princely order played a useful role in the great game to the empire. The ceremonial trapping were only peripheral to the actual functioning of sovereignty within this feudatory polity. Even the ceremonial aspect was an old tradition, and new ones were borrowed from the abroad, such as gun salutes, order of knighthood, and court of the arms. The most important features of the princely order was that it acted a prop of imperial design. In this way, the administrative structure in princely state started. Princely order as a pop of imperial design, and the mechanism of imperial control, and then the difficulties of among the princely states. Then the bureaucratic and process of modernization. This is the last item. Okay. This is the last paragraph. The princess and the British both indwelled in the about the states to bring the ancient culture, oriental tradition and ideas. Yet the process of bureaucratization in the modernization started into the body of politics of the state. For administrative purpose, the princes relied on their bureaucracy, whose nature and quality influenced the state administration. Despite a general picture of corrupt and rotten administration, some administration associated with the princess earned a reputation of their own. K.M. Panikar, who served Patiala and Beknosar, and Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, and Diwan of Sir Mirza Ismail, who served as the Chief Minister of Mysore, Jajpur, and Hyderabad successively, were some of the able administrators in the service of princely state. In the majority of the state, education developed slowly compared to the British government empire. However, some princes in Mysore, Baroda, and took lead in the direction. Gaikwad Baroda introduced the free compulsory primary education in 1894. The British, however, generally discouraged the scheme of reforms modernizing the princess and disapproved of the agrarian and legislative forms of Raja Ramo Burma and Cochin, who was forced to the abdicated throne. As already noted earlier, the British had achieved a greater control over person and territories in the state by 900 through communication and transport network. The pace of economic modernization also varied from state to state. Some of the states attracted capital for industrial growth. A number of factors facilitated capital investment in the state, which were thereby categorized as advanced state. As the state did not levy any income and corporate taxes and less labor laws. This opportunity combined with handsome subsidy in the certain key sector attracted capital. In 1 year, 1943-44, 5 crore of new industrial capital followed into the state. A part of a new investment came into mining, but factory production and Ineffectual absorbed a greater portion. Mysore took the lead in woolen textile, automobile, and aircraft production in 1940. Baroda became a prominent center of cotton textile industry, while Hyderabad attracted new investment in cement, chemical, fertilizer industry. The city of Gwalior developed major industry center and with many cotton textile mill, oil, millions of power, sanction and the embroidery system of machine tool industry. The Gwalior state also invested income stocks of Bombay cotton mill and brick kilns. In this way, you have learned how the political map of India was by the East India Company through the subsidiary alliance system. However, during the mutiny, the state had proved a loyalty and therefore step by step taken to ensure their princely rule was safe in India. A grand historical alliance was formed between the capitalist Britain and the feudal princely house in India. The alliance offered many advantages to both British Empire and their own subject. However, the princes were into the overall imperial system of British system. They acted as allies of the British permanent power and accepted imperial control over the country. The expansion of British control over the territories, communication, and finance in India was also held by the princely Darbar. The residence system and the introduction of bureaucracy on British model were the basic tools of imperial control. However, the British intervention was not homogeneous and British impact on these princely houses differed from one state to another. The rising of tide of popular agitation and the withdrawal of British pharmacy sealed in the fate of princely order, and they were soon absorbed into the post-colonial politics of either India or Pakistan after 1947. Then the chapter over. Trace the genesis of the now the question arises. Trace the genesis of the princely state. What are the basic feature of the administrative structure in princely state? Okay, okay, my dear student, tell me about your doubt.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Ah,
Ma'am, what do you
so,
mean by paragonal level?
हाँ. What do you mean by?
Paragonal level जो PARGNA
ମାନେ କୋଉ ଲେବୁଲରେ ସେମାନେ ହଉଛି ଆମ ଇଏକୁ ଶୋଷଣ କରିଥିଲେ
ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ
କାହାକୁ?
ଲେବଲ ନାଁ ହଉଛି ପାରଗନା।
ହଁ, ଆଚ୍ଛା କହିଲ ଦେଖିଆ ଆମକୁ ଆମ ଭାରତକୁ ହେଲା ଏଇ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଇଂରେଜ ମାନେ କେତେ ବର୍ଷ ଶାସନ କରିଥିଲେ? ଆମ ଭାରତକୁ ଇଂରେଜ ମାନେ ହେଲା କେତେ ବର୍ଷ ଶାସନ କରିଥିଲେ? ଭାବିକି କୁହ। How many years the Britishers? How many years the Britishers start their rule in India? Continue their rule in
200
India.
years.
Yes, very good. Who is give this answer? Who will give this answer? Who give this
Ma'am,
answer?
Usha.
Yes,
Usha.
very good. Yes, good. And then the next question. ସେମାନେ ତ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଆସିଥିଲେ ହେଲା କୋଉମାନେ? ବ୍ରିଟିଶର୍ସ
Ma'am,
ମାନେ
ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ ମାନେ
ମାନେ trading system. They came to India as a traders. Do you understand?
yes, ma'am.
And then they started their ruling in India. Why? ସେମାନେ ତ ବାଣିଜ୍ୟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ ଆସିଥିଲେ ହେଲା ତ କେମିତି ଭାରତରେ ରହିକି ପୁଣି ଶାସନ କଲେ କଣ ଏମିତି ଦେଖିଲେ ଭାରତରେ? Why they interested for India? The people are common. The position of India is good. The wealth are very. In these things, tell me about these things. Anyone? Hello. With the British administration, the dark clouds of misery loomed large over the economic horizon of Indians. The one pointed goal of the British was to exploit the Indians. Through their land revenue and commercial policy, they very much exploited the Indians by developing transport, communication, and expanded their commercial empire in India. Okay. Another front, yes, another front of the British exploitation was inaugurated with the implementation of their commercial policy. Okay. Other.
Yes, ma'am.
Now write the question. First question. Discuss the process. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Discuss the process which led to the emergence and consolidation of the 18th century politics. Discuss the process which led to the emergence and consolidation of the 18th century politics. କିଏ ଗୋଟେ ମତେ କାଲି ପଚାରୁଥିଲ ନା ଆନାସେଷ୍ଟର ମାନେ କଣ? କିଏ ପଚାରୁଥିଲ ରେ? ହ୍ୟାଲୋ, ଆନସେଷ୍ଟର ମାନେ କିଏ ପଚାରୁଥିଲ କାଲି ବକ୍ସ ରେ? ହ୍ୟାଲୋ, ancestors ମାନେ ଉତ୍ତରାଧିକାରୀ, ତାପରେ କିଏ ହେବେ ହେଲା? Discuss the process which led to the emergence and consolidation of the 18th century politics. Okay, ଲେଖିଲ?
Yes, ma'am.
ହଁ, next question. How did these politics legitimate their authority? How did the politics legitimize their authority? Hello, would you consider the French to be the forerunners of colonialization in India? Would you consider the French to be the forerunners of colonialization in India? Discuss.
Foreigners of?
Foreigners of কোটা লিখলো? Would you consider the
Would you
French? French
no.
to be the forerunners of colonialization in India? ଲେଖିଲ? Next, discuss the chief characteristics. Yes,
Ma'am, out the question.
yes. Would you consider the French to be the forerunners of colonization in India? ଲେଖିଲ ରେ? ନା ଆଉ ଥରେ କହିବି? Discuss the chief characteristics of Portuguese sea-borne empire. Discuss the chief characteristics of the Portuguese sea-borne empire. Discuss the chief characteristics of the Portuguese sea-borne empire. ଲେଖିଲ? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Next question. Ready for next question? Write down.
Ma'am.
Yes. Discuss the features of colonial military system in India. Discuss the features of colonial military system in India. Okay. Discuss the means adopted by the colonial state to legitimize its rule in India. Discuss the means adopted by the colonial state to legitimize its rule in India.
Ma'am, adopted the
Adopted by the colonial state to legitimize its rule in India. Legitimise. Legitimize. Okay. Next question.
yes.
Okay, next. Trace the genesis of the princely state. Trace the genesis of the princely state. GENESIS. Next question. What are the basic features of the administrative structure in the princely state? What were the basic features of the administrative structure in the princely state? ସୁଶାନ୍ତି
Yes, ma'am.
ଲେଖୁଛ ନା?
Yes, ma'am.
ପୁଷ୍ପାଞ୍ଜଳି hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ma'am, repeat it. What are the basic features of?
The administrative structure in the princely states. What do you mean by drain of wealth? For 10 marks. What do you mean by drain of wealth? And then causes of the drain of wealth. Next question. Position of wealth during pre-British and British period.
Ma'am, repeat.
Position of wealth during pre-British and British period. Short notes. Moneylenders, new landlordism, cash crops,
Ma'am, after money.
moneylenders, cash crops, comma दे लेख, rise of new landlordism, creation of market for foreign goods, creation of new industries. And the final question, if discuss effects of drain of wealth.
Ma'am, discuss about
the effects of drain of wealth. हेलो एला मु जहाँ पढ़ेली टिके टिके कुह जणे जणे कि ना मु शुणी शुणी जीवी ठीक बाटा हो कर अल्प 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 जे जहाँ बुझीच जणे जणे कुह स्टेप बाय स्टेप.
Ma'am, last question, please. Discuss about the effects of
Drain of wealth.
yes, ma'am.
से ओडिया पिला कुआडे गला भल आंसर दिए से ओडिया रे कहू सब सुनिबा. हेलो बढ़िया आंसर दउथलो से कुआडे गला आज आसीनांती कि शर्मिष्ठा
Yes, ma'am.
कौन पढ़ेली आज कुह
18th century policy
हाँ
ତା ଭିତରେ ମରାଠା ବଙ୍ଗାଲ ଆୱଧ
हम्म अयोध्या ना अयोध्या हाँ कुह
Ma'am, Awadh, Awadh.
ଆୱଧ
and then
and Hyderabad
Hyderabad and Mysore.
yes and then
Economic basis of the 18th century politics.
yes
उसमें अवध, द मराठास, बंगाल, मैसूर के बारे में पढ़े हैं.
yes yes very
Regional
good
basic of power through rebellion and authority.
yes
Awadh, Bengal, Hyderabad, the Maratha and Sikh policies.
yes ଯୋଉମାନେ ନେକ୍ସଟ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ଗୁଡା ନ କରିଛ ନେକ୍ସଟ କ୍ଲାସ ଗୁଡା ନ କରିଛ ସାର୍ ଛାଡି ଦଉଛନ୍ତି ଭିଡିଓ ହେଲା ୟୁଟ୍ୟୁବ ରେ ମାରିକି ଦେଖିଦବ ଠିକ ଅଛି କାଲି ଜଣେ କହୁଥିଲେ କି ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ମୁଁ ନେକ୍ସଟ 2ଟା କ୍ଲାସ କରିନି ଆଉ ସେଗୁଡା ପାଇଁ ମୋର ଦରକାର ତ ୟୁଟ୍ୟୁବ ରୁ ତାଙ୍କୁ କହିବ ଦେଖିନେବେ ଆଉ ପ୍ରିଭିୟସ୍ କ୍ଲାसेସ୍ ଗୁଡା ହେଲା ହ୍ୟାଲୋ
yes ma'am
ହଁ ହଁ ଯୋଉମାନେ ନ କରିଛ କ୍ଲାସ ପ୍ରିଭିୟସ୍ କ୍ଲାସ ଗୁଡା ଦେଖିନବ ନହେଲେ ଯାହା ନୋଟ୍ସ ତମର ସେଣ୍ଡ କରାକରି ହବ ଆଉ ହେଲା ଓକେ ରେକର୍ଡେଡ ହେଇକି ତ ସବୁ ରହୁଛି ଠିକ ଅଛି ଆଚ୍ଛା କହିଲ ଦେଖିଆ ଥିଓରି ଅଫ ଡ୍ରେନ୍ ଅଫ ୱେଲ୍ଥ କଣ ପଢେଇ ଦଉଛି ଶୁଣ ହେଲା ଶୁଣିବ ନା
ମ୍ୟାମ୍ ନୋଟ ଗୁଡା ଆମକୁ କେମିତି
Yes,
ଦଉନାହାନ୍ତି
ma'am.
ନୋଟ ଗୁଡା ପିଡିଏଫ କରିକି ଛାଡିବି ପା ଦେଖିଆ ସାର୍ କେତେ ଦଉଛନ୍ତି ତାପରେ ମୁଁ ଇଏ କରିକି ଇଏ କରିବି ଆଉ ହେଲା ଆଉ କହିଲ କୁହ ଦେଖିଆ ଯୋଉ ହେଲା ଏଇଟା କୁହ ଡ୍ରେନ୍ ଅଫ ୱେଲ୍ଥ କଣ କହିବ ନା ମୁଁ କହିଦେବି
Britain were draining India. Drain of wealth theory is mean that.
ମୁଁ କହୁଛି ଶୁଣ ତାହେଲେ ଜାଣିଛ କିନ୍ତୁ ଅଳ୍ପ ଅଳ୍ପ ହେଲା the
Okay,
Indians
madam.
were the victims of the Britishers' economic exploitation. They exploited the Indian economy in various ways. As a result, there was a drain of wealth from India to England. Dadabhai Narji, Ramesh Chandra Datta, J.V. Joshi, and others were the spokesmen of the theory of drain of wealth. Forcefully, and they denounced the drain of wealth from India to England. The British drained the wealth of India to England. Several factors for this. Firstly, the colonial economy of India was controlled and regulated from far of England. To aid to it, the Indians had virtually little control over it. Secondly, the British opposed to tooth and nail any industrial progress in India. Thirdly, the outstanding factor behind this that its army and that the drain of wealth was cost maintenance of its administrative officials and employees as also that the army of defensive and offensive imperialist purpose. Fourthly, the geographical location of India helped the British to conquer and extend their dominions to territories outside India. So the collector form of revenue, railways, postal and other departments as well as from several industries in India was not spent for the welfare of Indians. The British were content to remain foreigners, unlike other in the past. As a result, the drain of wealth saw the British exporting British to the large portion of India wealth and resources without giving the Indians any economic returns. Okay. Dadabhai Narji was the first to expose the drain of wealth. He did not drawing a comparative picture of the state to wealth during the pre-British period. He saw that during the rule of Mughals, the Maratha wealth exported from India, however, remained in India. This was recycled again to spent in India and on the Indians. Even if a single state of kingdom was economically ruined, the total wealth of India remained in India. Thus, the economy of India as a whole was never in danger. But with the advent of the British, situation was drastically altered. The began from Bengal in 1757. The drain from Bengal. So, companies employing taking home to England immense of fortune extracted from local people in Bengal with the acquisition of Diwani. In this way, this is called as the drain of wealth. Dadabhai Naraji sustained the drain of wealth theory for the period between 757 and 1857. Okay. Next.
Yes, ma'am.
ଆଉ କଣ କୁହ?
Hello.
ନେକ୍ସଟ ଆମର କଣ
Hello.
ପଢିବା? ହଁ କୁହ।
ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ମୋର ଗୋଟେ କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ଅଛି
ହଁ କୁହ।
ଯେତେବେଳେ ପର୍ତ୍ତୁଗୀଜ ହଉ କି ଡଚ କି ବ୍ରିଟିଶ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆସିଲେ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ଟାଇମ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆକୁ ବାଇ ସି ରୁଟ୍ ଆସିଲେ ତ ସେମାନେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର କୋଉ ଡିରେକ୍ସନ ରେ ଆସିକି ପୁଣି କୋଉ ଆଡକୁ ସେମାନେ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଟା କୋଉ ଆଡେ କୋଉଠୁ କୋଉ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ହେଇଥିଲା ଅଲ ଓଭର
ପ୍ରଥମେ
ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ତ ସେମାନେ ପଛେ ହଁ
ନା ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଆମକୁ କିଏ ଦେଲେ? କଲମ୍ବସ, ଭାସ୍କୋଡାଗାମା, ମ୍ୟାଗଲେନ ହେଲା। 3 ଜଣ ଆମକୁ ରୁଟ ବିଷୟରେ ଜଣେଇଦେଲେ। ସମସ୍ତେ କଣ ଭାବୁଥିଲେ କି ମାନେ ପୃଥିବୀଟା ମାନେ କୁଆଡକୁ ଯାଇଛି ସେମାନେ ଜାଣିନଥିଲେ।
ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ଭାସ୍କୋଡାଗାମା କଲମ୍ବସ ଆଉ ଜଣଙ୍କର ନାଁ କଣ କହିଲେ?
ମ୍ୟାଗେଲେନ।
ମ୍ୟାଡେଲେନ ଆଚ୍ଛା। ସେ
1400
କୋଉ ସେ କୋଉ
ସବୁ
ସେ
ଫ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ
କୋଉ
ର
ଦେଶର ମେଦେଲେନ ଫ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ଆଚ୍ଛା ହଁ
ସମସ୍ତେ ଫ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ହେଲା। ତ ସେ
ହୁଁ
ଯେତେବେଳେ ରାଣୀ ଭିକ୍ଟୋରିଆଙ୍କଠୁ ପଇସା ନେଇକି ପ୍ରଥମେ ଫାଷ୍ଟ 3ଟା ଜାହାଜରେ ସେ ତାଙ୍କର ଜର୍ଣ୍ଣି ଟା ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରିଛନ୍ତି ହେଲା। ବହୁତ କଷ୍ଟ କରିଛନ୍ତି ହେଲା। ଏମିତି
ହୁଁ
କି ତାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ଖାଦ୍ୟ ନଥିଲା, କିଛି ନଥିଲା। ଡଙ୍ଗା ଟା ମାନେ ବୁଡି ଯାଉଥାଏ। ସମସ୍ତେ ପୁରା ମାନେ ବହୁତ ଲୋକ ମରି ଯାଇଥିଲେଣି ଆଉ
ସେମାନେ
କିଛି କିଛି
ସମସ୍ତେ
ଥିଲେ।
ଅଲଗା ଅଲଗା ଟାଇମ ରେ
ନା
ଅଲଗା ଅଲଗା ଟାଇମ ରେ ସମସ୍ତେ ଆସିଥିଲେ ନା ମ୍ୟାଡାମ?
ଗୋଟିଏ ହଁ ଅଲଗା ଅଲଗା ଟାଇମରେ ଫାଷ୍ଟ
ଏକା ଟାଇମ ରେ
ନା ଅଲଗା ଅଲଗା ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଯିଏ କଲମ୍ବସ ଆସିଥିଲେ ମୁଁ ତାଙ୍କ କଥା କହୁଛି ହେଲା। ତ ସେ କଲମ୍ବସ ଯେତେବେଳେ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ହଁ
ଆସିଥିଲେ ସେତେବେଳେ ସେଇ ଯୋଉ ସରିଗଲା ଖାଦ୍ୟ ତାପରେ ସେ ପୁରା ମଝିରେ ରହିଛନ୍ତି। କୋଉଠି? ସମୁଦ୍ର ମଝିରେ। ସେଇ ସମୟରେ ସେ ଜାଣି ପାରୁନାହାନ୍ତି କୋଉ ଆଡକୁ ଯିବେ। ତ ପୁରା ଉମିଦ
ହୁଁ
ମାନେ ହରେଇଥିଲେଣି। ଏଇ ସମୟରେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଲାଗିଲା କି କିଛି ଗୋଟେ ସେ ଦୂରରେ ଅଛି। ତାପରେ ସେଇଠି ଯାଇକି ପହଞ୍ଚିଲେ। ସେଇଟା ଥିଲା ଆମେରିକା ହେଲା। ତ
ଆମେରିକା
ସେଇଠି
ହଁ
ଗୋଟେ
ହୁଁ
ଲୋହିତ ଭାରତୀୟକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଦେଖିଲେ ଆମେରିକ ଭେଷଭୁଷି
ହୁଁ
ଆଉ ସେଇଟାକୁ ସେ
ହୁଁ
ଭାବିଲେ ଏଇଟା ହିଁ ହଉଛି ଭାରତ। କିନ୍ତୁ ପରେ ସେଟା
ହୁଁ
ଜାଣିଲେ
ହୁଁ
ଏଇଟା ହଉଛି ଆମେରିକା। ତ ଜଳପଥ
ଆମେରିକା
ଆବିଷ୍କାର
ହଁ
ଜଳପଥ ଆବିଷ୍କାର ହେଇଗଲା ସି ରୁଟ ବୁଝିପାରିଲ। ତାପରେ
ହୁଁ
ସମସ୍ତେ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କଲେ। କାହିଁକି ନା ତାଙ୍କ ପାଖରେ ନାବିକ ଯନ୍ତ୍ର ବା କମ୍ପାସ ଥିଲା। ମେରିନର କମ୍ପାସ। ଆଉ ତ କୋଉ ପଟେ କୋଉ ଇଏଟା ଅଛି ସେମାନେ ଡାଇରେକ୍ସନ ଦ୍ଵାରା ଜାଣିପାରୁଥିଲେ ହେଲା। ମ୍ୟାରିନର
ହୁଁ
କମ୍ପାସ। ଓକେ। ତ ଭାସ୍କୋଡାଗାମା କେତେ ଖ୍ରୀଷ୍ଟାବ୍ଦରେ ଜଳପଥ ଆବିଷ୍କାର କଲେ କୁହ?
1498
1498 ହେଲା।
98
ତାପରେ ହଁ 98 ହେଲା।
ହୁଁ ହୁଁ
ତାପରେ ଚାଲିଲେ ଏଇଆ ଆଉ।
ହୁଁ
ନେକ୍ସଟ କୁହ।
ନାଇଁ ମୋର କୋଶ୍ଚେନ ଅଲଗା ଥିଲା ମ୍ୟାଡାମ। ମାନେ ମୁଁ କହୁଛି
ହଁ
ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆସିଲେ ଯୋଉମାନେ ବି ଆସିଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନଙ୍କର
ହଁ
ରୁଟ ଟା ପ୍ରଥମେ ୱେଷ୍ଟ ରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇକି ଇଷ୍ଟ ଗଲା ନା ୱେଷ୍ଟ ରୁ ସାଉଥ ଯାଇକି ପୁଣି ଇଷ୍ଟ ଯାଇକି ପୁରା କଭର କଲେ କି କେମିତି ମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର
ନା
ଇଏଟା ହୁଁ
ପ୍ରଥମେ ଆମର ସେତେବେଳେ କିଏ ଥିଲେ? ମୋଗଲର ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆସିଛନ୍ତି
ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀର
ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀର ପାଖକୁ ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀରଙ୍କ ପାଖକୁ ସେମାନେ ଯାଇକି ସେମାନେ ମାଗିଛନ୍ତି କଣ? ଗୋଟେ ଆଦେଶ ନାମା କି ଆମକୁ ଏଇଟା ଦିଆଯାଉ। ତ ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀର ଆଉ
ହୁଁ
ମୋଗଲ ଗୁଡା ସେତେବେଳେ କୋଉଠି ଥିଲା? ମୋଗଲ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରି ଗୁଡା କୁହ? ଇଷ୍ଟ ନା ୱେଷ୍ଟ ନା ସାଉଥ ରେ କୋଉଠି ଥିଲା? ମୋଗଲ ଯୋଉ
ମୋଗଲ
ଆମର ଆସିଲେ ସେମାନେ କୋଉଠି ସବୁ ଆମର
ହୁଁ
ଇଏ କରିଥିଲେ? କିଙ୍ଗଡମ ତାଙ୍କର କୋଉଠି ଥିଲା? ଆରେ ସବୁ ଦିଗରେ ହିଁ ଥିଲା ବୁଝିପାରୁଛ। ଆକବରଙ୍କର କିଛି ଇଏଙ୍କର ସମସ୍ତଙ୍କର ତ ମାନେ ମିଶିକି ପୁରା ଭାରତ ଟାକୁ ସେମାନେ ଇଏ କରିଥିଲେ ତ। ତ ସି ରୁଟ
ହୁଁ
ରୁ
ହୁଁ
ଯିବା ପାଇଁ ପ୍ରଥମେ ସେମାନେ ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀର କୁ ମାନେ ପରମିସନ ବା ସନନ୍ଦ ପତ୍ର ଯୋଉଟା କୁହାଯାଏ କି ସନନ୍ଦ ପତ୍ର ହେଲା ସେଇଟା
ହୁଁ ହୁଁ
ତାଙ୍କଠୁ ମାଗିଥିଲେ। ତ ଜାହାଙ୍ଗୀର ଏତେ ସେ ଜାଣିନଥିଲେ କି ଏମାନେ ଦିନେ ଆମ ଇଏଟାକୁ ହିଁ କ୍ୟାପଚର କରିନେବେ। ସେ ତାଙ୍କୁ ଦେଇ ଦେଇଥିଲେ। ତାପରେ ତ ୱାନ ବାଇ ୱାନ ସମସ୍ତେ ଆସିଥିଲେ ଆଉ ହେଲା।
ଆଚ୍ଛା ହଉ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କୟୁ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ।
ହଁ ଓକେ। आज आउ कौन क्वेश्चन कह नले टिके 50 बेल को पळेबा मो टिके आज काम अछि 11:50 रे आज लेफ्ट हे दिबा ना आउ किछ कहबो जदी रहिबी
ନାଇଁ ମ୍ୟାଡ଼ାମ ଠିକ ଅଛି।
एक्चुअली से जो क्वेश्चन पचार से पिलाटी जे ब्रिटिश बा पोर्तुगीज जेतला आसी कालीकोट रे पहुंचले बा कालीकोट रु जामोरिन थिले तळे तांगो परमिशन नै कि जेतले एस्टैब्लिश करले फास्ट ट्रेडिंग सेंटर तांगर क्वेश्चन थिला जे हाउ इट द हाउ दे एस्टैब्लिश द एम्पायर थ्रू आउट इंडिया फास्ट साउथ रे एंटर कला परे then they started thinking about how to establish their empire in eastern India.
yes
Eastern India kahi ki se manakro Eastern India concept asla de how to establish the Eastern India. It was the central point for trading and commerce with the Southeast Asia.
yes sir
Or generally it was the Bengal was the focal point for trade and commerce. So semanakor asla je Bengal ko ame capture kole that time Bengal was the main attraction and it was centrally it was the Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. It was controlled by Mughal emperor by
Mughal emperor yes sir
ତେଣୁ ସେମାନଙ୍କର ମେନ୍ ଆଇଡିଆ ଥିଲା ହାଉ ଟୁ ଏଷ୍ଟାବ୍ଲିଶ ଦ ଇଷ୍ଟର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ହେଇଗଲେ କଣ ତମେ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରାଟେଜିକ ଆଡପ୍ଟ ଗୋଟେ ପର୍ଟିକୁଲାର ଭିଜନ ନେଇକି ସେମାନେ କାମ କରୁଥିଲେ
yes sir
ସେମାନେ ସାଉଥ ରେ ଦେଖିଲେ ଗ୍ରାଜୁଆଲି ଟିକେ ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ହେଲା ଅବଷ୍ଟ୍ରକ୍ସନ ହେଲା ଅବଷ୍ଟାକଲ୍ସ ହେଲା ତେଣୁ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ଆମେ ଇଷ୍ଟର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ଯିବା ଇଷ୍ଟର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ଗଲାକୁ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଇଷ୍ଟର୍ଣ୍ଣ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଦେ ବିକେମ୍ ସକ୍ସେସଫୁଲ ବ୍ୟାଟଲ ଅଫ ପ୍ଲାସି ବ୍ୟାଟଲ ଅଫ ବକ୍ସାର Jasu war battle hela then after that they became successful in establishing the empire there. Then they are when British the Bengal came under the control of the British, so ultimately Delhi was the threat and Delhi ultimate because the how Shah Alam II was defeated ultimately, which led to the path or which led to the open the path for establishing their empire in other directions like Western India or
Calcutta Fort William
Central India or Northern India. So it
Northern India
so they gradually semanakar strategic बहुत strategic policy
fully diplomatically sir
बहुत diplomatic thile and they
yes,
were responding and they when there will be obstruction they will take a decision that if somebody will obstruct our policy, so we will ally our military powers with other neighboring states so that the combined army or the allied powers, the army of the allied powers can be utilized against the person who against the province which obstructed the entry of the British rule into their province. So that was a policy adopted and of course that policy was very successful, that divide and rule policy and subsidiary alliance and
doctrine of love
subsidiary alliance
doctrine of
dual
love
governance.
yes.
These are the policy
yes sir
these are the policy adopted by the British in establishing their empire.
Yes sir, to capturing India.
Subsidiary alliance now. So I hope that you have covered almost 70 to 80%. So any question? Let us discuss. Usha Jha, do you have any question? Usha Jha, do you have any question? Or no? If it is no, it's all right. That you are thoroughly understanding the concept.
Hello, sir. There is a question.
So ask me.
Sir, the main features of political structure of princely states.
The main features of political structure.
Political structure. Yes, sir. Political structure of princely state.
Oh, princely states. So
Yes, sir.
princely states generally, how can you define princely states? How can you define? Princely states means the British realized there are you can say British Indian states and princely states. British Indian states are those states which were directly controlled and administered by the British government. They are called British Indian states. and the states which are controlled, uh, or you can say some kind of autonomy was given to them to rule over the states, but they will be under the supervision of the British government. Do you understand? The British government realized that if we'll intervene suddenly in their affairs, they will be reactionary, and they will revolt against the British government. So that is why, in order to pacify or in order to satisfy them, they followed the policy of particle mutual relationship or relationship developed with the princely princely states. Princely states, they came under the subsidiary
Supreme
power
control of the
or,
yes.
or subsidiary alliance, and but they were allowed to rule over their own states without, or you can say, without any interference. Of course, British government monitor them, supervise them, but when they will think, when at the time when we will think that this state is out of our control, so they will immediately take the military power to, or you can say, to annex them to their empire. So there are, or you can say, British Indian states and princely states. Clear now? I understood.
Okay.
British
Yes,
Indian
sir. Yes.
states
Yes, sir.
are those provinces or those states are directly controlled by the British government, directly controlled, and on their representatives or the British East India Company were directly controlled through their agents. Okay, but
Okay, sir.
princely states, there are example is that Rani, or you can say Jhansi, or you can say Abad, Jhansi, then Meerut, then you can take the Gwalior, okay, and Jaipur, Jodhpur, okay, these are the you can say princely states, and these princes were the rulers were given the autonomy to rule over their own states. At the same time, British appointed agent, or you can say their agent in their state to see, not to intervene, to see, to see and monitor that what type of activities they were doing in their own states. But less interference or interference were not there from the British side, because they were very cunning. They adopted a very diplomatic policy how to satisfy the Indian rulers. If immediately they thought that if immediately we will intervene in their political affairs or economic affairs, or any, or you can say in administrative affairs, they will be reactionary or they will be revolutionary immediately, and they may start in revolt, or they may rise in revolt. So with this objective, the British made them independent, or made them not independent, made them autonomy, or given them autonomy, and without any interference. These are the princely states, but with certain conditions. Okay, but there are certain conditions were there. The condition is that without the knowledge of the British government, they cannot make any alliance with any other power. They cannot make any military aggression against the neighboring states without their knowledge, without their prior permission, and without the knowledge of the British government. They cannot, you can say, conclude any peace on any war, on any economic or any kind of decision they cannot take without the knowledge of the British government. It means the indirectly the British imposed restrictions on the princely states. So in this way, the British administration gradually it spread out throughout India, and by following different policies and principles, and these principles really helped the British government to establish their hegemony all over India. So, any more question? If you do not understand from modern India,
No, sir.
hello, no question.
No, sir.
अरे
Arey, you
back
ask
here करो
question. You ask question.
anything.
because there is a question, you see, there is a question generally it is asked. So how the Battle of Plassey is different from Battle of Buxar? This is a very important question. How politically Battle of Plassey is different from Battle of Buxar? Okay, and you have to write how in what was the power was involved in Battle of Plassey and what are the powers were involved in Battle of Buxar. Okay, how politically it was significant, how Battle of Buxar was politically significant, in particularly uh, in modern India or in the establishing of British Empire in India. Because you'll see in Battle of Plassey, that is only single power was involved, that is Sirajudollah. But it was a one-sided battle because Mir Qasim was bribed. Must have heard. Yes or no? Have you gone through the material? Yes. We've gone through the material. I'll tell you each and every component how Mir Qasim was bribed by the British government because they realized that because always the British followed the policy of divide and rule, means conspiracy, entries, okay, how to conspire against each other, so that how to instigate one against other, so that they can win over the or you can the state, and they can bring the state under the control of the British government. That was the policy adopted by the British government. And conspiracy, entries, then division of power, then divide and rule, and these are the, or you can see, these are the suppressive measure or battle, or you can say, or raging army, or you can say taking up the arms. These are the power, these are the methods they adopted to suppress the British or to suppress the Indians or the Indian rulers. But in Battle of Buxar, you can say in the Battle of Plassey, Sirajudollah was the only power, only ruler fought against the British, or you can say imperialism. But he could not sustain, he could not be successful because due to the conspiracy or due to the non-involvement of Mir Qasim in the battle. Only Mir Madan, he was the one of the commanders or one of the commandants of his army. He fought till his death. Okay, till his death. But it was not political so much important than the Battle of Buxar, because in the Battle of Buxar, three powers were involved. Then was his Mir Qasim, or you can say uh, how the three powers were involved. Then in the Battle of Buxar, you see Sujaudullah of Awadh and Sahalam Sikin, and or you can say the governor, or you can say the Mughal ruler who was ruling over Bengal. But question arises here: the three powers, when they were involved in this Buxar war, it could not they could not sustain, they could not survive against the British rule because of the modern arms, because of the better policies, better techniques used by the British government against the three powers. Okay, and you know that. Sorry, Mir Jafar. Sorry, in the Battle of Buxar, Battle of Plassey, Mir Jafar was bribed. Okay, Mir Qasim, not Mir Qasim. Sorry, but Mir Jafar was bribed, but Mir Qasim, he was in very much in the Battle of Buxar. So three powers: Mir Qasim, then Sujaudullah of Awadh, and Salam II. These three powers were involved in the Battle of Buxar. And but in the Battle of Plassey, as I said, there is Sirajudollah,
Sirajudollah.
and that Mir Jafar was bribed,
Mir Jafar,
not Mir Qasim. Mir Jafar was bribed, and he was sided with the British government. Then any more question? That is why it was political significance. This is a question. This is You have to write within 500 words. Okay. Point wise, write point wise. Always, whenever you write, always focus on points. Any more question? No, no question. Alright, put some question. Drain of wealth of drain of wealth. Do you understand that one? Hello. Alright, drain of wealth. Do you understand? Nobody responding. Hello.
Yes, sir, ma'am. Just explain now.
Okay. There's it is a drain wealth theory. Is a Dadabhai Naroji's own concept. He advocated the drain wealth. How British, you will be surprised to know, the British invested our own resources in India. Okay, how it could be possible? You see, they collected Indian raw materials at a very cheapest rate. Okay, very cheapest rate, and exported it to their own native countries to produce in the form of finished products. And the finished products were sold in the Indian market, which was comparatively less or cheaper to the Indian products produced by the native Indian artisans or craftsmen. So definitely the cheaper or the cheapest, or you can say the products which were available at the cheapest rate or cheapest price was demanded by the Indians. So there was a, or you can say, decline of economy of India. Okay, and the artisans and Indian craftsmen, they could not compete with the British products, because British products, it was a labor because you see the product was produced by the British industries, which was better and looking better and very attractive and cheaper, and is a market oriented, and you can say the production, you can say the manufacturing cost is very less, so that it could capture the market in India. But at on the other hand, the Indian products or Indian goods or commodities produced by the Indian you can say Indian craftsmen or smith or craftsmen or artisans, which did not have any, they did not use any techniques or modern techniques. Okay, and they did not use any modern techniques. Traditional way they produced, so that it was very, the cost of production was very expensive, so that it could not be sold at a less price or cheaper price. So ultimately, the economy was drained out, or you can say gradually the British drain out our wealth at the cost of or you can say collecting the Indian raw materials and exported to their own country, building their own economy. They never thought about Indian economy. They never thought about the common people. They never thought about agriculture. They never thought about the agriculturists or the farmers who are directly or indirectly involved in the farming or agriculture sector. Rather, the main policy was to exploit the Indian economy and to build their own economy at a better state. So this was the state of affairs during the British rule, and all the principles or characteristics or of these economic policies were, or you can say, it was codified in the form of a wealth drain theory, and that was advocated by Dadabhai Naroji. Okay, that was advocated by Dadabhai Naroji. The main intention of Dadabhai Naroji was to ignite or to ignite the Indians. Okay, or you can say inspire the Indians, or to spread the message of how the economic exploitation was undertaken by the British government through different policies, so that Indians will be motivated to stand in revolt against the British imperialism. And that was the main eye opener. That was the main eye opener for the British policy, or you can say that is the main eye opener for the theory of drain wealth, which ultimately, or you can say, created awareness among the Indians, or created nationalism in the minds of the Indians, so that the people will be united, and they will fight against the British imperialism. With these few words, today we will conclude our session. Okay, and tomorrow at 10 a.m. SAF will meet with a new topic, new vision, and new, we can say, new objective. With these few words, have a nice day and study hard. Okay, if you have any question, you can ask me from modern India or medieval India or ancient India. We can discuss thoroughly. Okay, but you have to know each and every concept thoroughly. Otherwise, you cannot understand the modern India. Okay, I'll start from okay, madam. I think madam is already online. So tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I also specially thanks our madam for sparing her valuable time with us, sparing.
Thank you, sir.
So, because I was also interested to take the classes, but due to paucity of time, scarcity of time, it's not possible, because I am involved in 2-3 online classes. So,
Okay, sir.
it's
Yes,
not
sir.
possible. Thank you.